Meanwhile, Lee Zeldin, the former congressperson from New York who ran for governor of New York, that may have saved Republican Congress a couple of years back because he outperformed against Kathy Hochul. He was asked by the execrable Senator Sanders about China and our perspective on China. He's going to be the head of the EPA. And he says, listen, China's an adversary. Why are we pretending they're our friends?
Are you and hopefully your colleagues, if you are confirmed, prepared to work with China to try to lower carbon emissions?
Senator, on many different issues, it is important not just to be working with nations that we are the strongest aligned with, but to also be in communication with and engaged in dialogue with countries that might be considered competitors and also our greatest adversaries. And right now, China is an adversary in many respects.
He is right about that. And this is why I'm very confused about the varying perspectives on the right about TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese app. It is run by ByteDance. ByteDance is a subsidiary of the Chinese government. They are gathering data on Americans. They are spreading via social media algorithm mental poison to Americans. And the way that you can tell this is that the version of TikTok that Chinese people see is totally different. You're not going to see attempts at transgendering the children in China. You're going to see that all over TikTok today. Chinese government propaganda is going out on TikTok at an alarming rate on every issue, from economics to foreign policy. Okay, China runs the listen, I'm speaking as somebody who has 3 million followers, almost 3 million followers over at TikTok, and something like 60 million likes over at TikTok. So this is not coming from a small account at TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese-owned app that is designed as a psyop on the American people. And yet somehow there's been this attempt, whether through solidarity with many of China's actual policies or out of a misguided belief that somehow if the American government doesn't like Chinese ownership of TikTok, that means the American government is attempting to censor information, to the idea that TikTok ought to be banned unless it divests of its Chinese ownership. Again, no one is suggesting that TikTok, if it were not owned by the Chinese, ought to be banned. No one is suggesting that, right, left, or center, so far as I'm aware. I'm not calling for any of the other social media mechanisms to be shuttered. In fact, I want them to broaden the amount of speech they allow. I've been fighting for that literally my entire career, and it's been a major issue for my company, The Daily Wire. TikTok, however, is a Chinese app. It is Chinese-owned. It is a Chinese propaganda tool. This is perfectly clear from all available data. And yet you're seeing some bizarre folks on the right now saying that if TikTok is shut down, they're going to go and join other Chinese apps. Okay, geniuses. I mean, I suppose if you would like the Chinese to, actually be able to face track you, which is apparently one of the things that these apps are doing. They're not just tracking your data. They're tracking literally everything about you. This is crazy towns. What is the possible logic? So one bizarrely awful account, a person named Kim Iverson tweeted, just download the Xiaohongshu app. Banning TikTok is going to completely, massively backfire. This app is showing Americans a completely different view of China. It's obvious China is the new world. Well, I guess you guys aren't being hijacked or anything by the Chinese. I guess that's not happening. And what would possess you? This is legitimately like you read a bunch of Walter Duranty propaganda about the Soviet Union in 1932. And then it turns out that Walter Duranty is basically having his prostitutes and booze paid for by the Soviet government. And that comes out and you're like, you know what? In retaliation for that coming out, I am now going to subscribe to Pravda and give them all my personal information. What the hell? Like, seriously, what? The Chinese, by the way, this is hilarious. The Chinese are actively attempting to ban American users from being able to reach the Chinese on their new Chinese apps. So Beijing censors are getting very upset. They're getting very upset because, as it turns out, the Americans who are joining all these apps, they don't want the Americans to actually be able to access Chinese viewers via these new apps. They want to ban them. They don't want anything American in their country. They don't want any of our culture in their country. What they do want to do is track everything you are doing. I fail to understand. Maybe there is no logic. Maybe it's all just reactionary nonsense. RedNote, which is one of these apps, is again doing extraordinary technological tracking of all of its users on behalf of the Chinese government. So, I mean, I guess if you want to give them your data, that's your problem. Just understand the Chinese government is going to have all of the data that is on your phone if you give it to them. According to the New York Times, Manimatana Lee spent the past 5 years building one of the hottest commodities on the internet, a group of people who reliably watch her videos on TikTok. She built an audience of nearly 10,000 followers with videos of herself vacuuming her house in Wisconsin while her youngest daughter napped in a carrier on her back. A video of Miss Lee dancing and doing the dishes has been watched more than 1 million times since November. Now, with the Supreme Court soon to rule in a case that could determine whether TikTok could be banned in the United States over national security concerns, Miss Lee and other Americans looking for alternatives are downloading Xiaohongshu, a social media app popular in China and little known outside the country. How funny would it be if they banned TikTok and we all just move over to this Chinese app? She wrote on Monday on TikTok, encouraging her followers to join her. Oh, goodness gracious, people. Seriously. I'm not getting it. Why do you want the Chinese to have your information? Why? You should be pushing for the actual bill that Congress pushed through to be implemented so that TikTok remains a feature of American life, but is not owned and run by the Chinese. By the way, this is not just a critique of the left. This is a critique of pretty much everybody who is pushing this nonsense. So Dave Portnoy, who generally I enjoy, the owner of Barstool Sports, he does a lot of great things, Dave Portnoy, when he's doing the other day, he did something awesome. He walked into a pizza shop and the pizza shop needed like 60 grand to keep operating. He liked the pizza. They were very nice to him, so he gave him 60 grand. Like Dave does some really great stuff. I don't know what he's talking about here via TikTok.
The TikTok thing, I've already talked about this, the ban. I don't think there's any way we lose TikTok. If we lose TikTok, first of all, I don't even think they can really ban TikTok. Like, I think it'll still work from what I've seen. You just can't, like, new people can't find it. Maybe I'm wrong. Whatever. If the U.S. government bans TikTok, it's just more proof they don't give a f*** about the American people at all. Like, they have no clue what's going on. They're detached from reality. The amount of people, businesses, creators, individuals, whatever you want to say, who earn a living through TikTok, they have no clue. So just to strip these people of their livelihoods overnight, because why? The only thing I can come up with, you're afraid China could use it for like disinformation, control the algorithm, show people what they see. Listen, again, if people are too dumb to check where they're getting information that is important in the first place, like what, the U.S. government doesn't do disinformation? It's not on Meta, it's not on... There's fake everywhere you go. If you have half a noodle up here, you got to check what you're doing, do your research. If you're just getting on a random TikTok dance, then you're a moron and whatever. I don't care about you. So again, I don't think there's any shot. I think the backlash will be too huge. Too many people losing their livelihoods. Too many people, companies losing marketing. I just don't see any way.
Why are you blaming America for that? America offered TikTok an alternative. Sell your algorithm. Just divest of your Chinese ownership. That's it. Instead, apparently the Trump administration is having the head of TikTok, a person named Xiao Chu, to sit among the president-elect's high-profile guests during the inaugural. Now listen, I understand there are a lot of TikTok stars who are fans of President Trump. Again, I have a lot of followers on TikTok. I'm a big backer of President Trump, and I think that this administration is going to be great. But the reason people are animated about TikTok has nothing to do with quote-unquote censorship. It has to do with the Chinese government running the thing. It's pretty wild.